I work with some athletes and entertainers and things like that people would know their name. My kids think it's cool when I tell them I'm doing their taxes. I recently got to thinking one of the most famous expats that I could do their taxes for would be the Pope himself, the new Pope Leo, who is a US citizen who has moved to the Vatican, and he's the Pope as of 2025. In this video, I'm going to talk about what I would do and the questions I would ask the Pope if I was his accountant in 2025 and going forward as one of the most famous expats in the world. So the Pope is from Chicago, he's from Illinois, he's a US citizen, he's moved and lived around the world, but now he's in the sovereign city-state of the Vatican. So it's a very interesting situation really, because as far as I know, there hasn't been a US citizen that's been Pope before, definitely not in the recent history. So some of the questions a nerd like me is thinking about is, what are the tax implications of this guy in the US going forward? What forms is he having to file with the IRS? What if the Pope were to get audited? You know, those are the things that I'm thinking about as an accountant, and I want to walk through some of the specific scenarios that could occur and some of the forms that he may be having to file, and what I might do as his accountant and how I might structure his assets so that his reporting isn't so bad, or at the end of the day, maybe he needs to get rid of his US citizenship altogether. So the first thing is, if you're liking this video, you should really check out my newsletter where I put out different tips and tricks, latest law changes that can really help you save money and save complexity if you're living or investing abroad. Just think how much you could save with the right tax advice. The foreign earned income exclusion. So what's a little confusing about the Pope is how he makes money. Clearly, he lives a nice lifestyle. He lives in the Vatican. He has vehicles available to him, people. I don't think he's having trouble with meals on a daily basis, but he doesn't actually earn a salary. He is eligible for a salary that he gives away to charity. So two things I want to point out there. If he was earning an income, he would be eligible for the foreign earned income exclusion. He lives outside the US. His tax home is definitely outside the US. One thing that's interesting that I wanted to look up is he actually in a earning foreign income? Because it has to be a sovereign state. For example, if you lived in Antarctica for a year, you couldn't claim the foreign earned income exclusion because you're not in a foreign country technically. Whereas Vatican City is a foreign country. It's not the same as Italy. It's its own things. That's where his tax home would be. So he would most likely be eligible for that foreign earned income exclusion if he did have earned income. But when he gives money away to charity, which he certainly does, he gives to charities all over the world, but also in the Vatican itself. One thing that he would have to look out for is if he did have income, he would not be able to deduct the donations he makes to charities that are not 501c3 US charities. So if you have contributions to a foreign charity, no matter how charitable or great the organization is, the IRS is not going to give you a deduction for it unless it's a US charity. And so the Pope is going to probably fall into that category where he wouldn't get that deduction either. So it's not so much income, I don't think, that the Pope is going to have to worry about. It's more his asset reporting. So the Pope, he lived in South America for a while, and now he's in Vatican, and he's going to have access to non-US bank accounts. Even if he doesn't own them directly, he's going to be a signature authority over, for all I know, he has signature authority over bank accounts for the Vatican itself and the church. So if that's the case, he would need to report that to the IRS on an FBAR. So it'd be pretty interesting to see the foreign financial account information of the Vatican itself, but I'm pretty sure that wouldn't end up on an FBAR. There'd be some way around that. Definitely one thing he'd be needing to look out for is asset reporting to the US. So that could also go on a form 8938. And the other thing I don't know, which I would want to ask him, is he involved in any ownership in foreign corporations outside the US? So maybe they're nonprofit organizations in the Vatican or in Italy that he may be an owner of as a US person. That could be something that's reportable to the US, even if it's a nonprofit, because the IRS isn't going to recognize the nonprofit status outside the US, which could trigger weird things like GILTI and income inclusions in the US through those ownership. So if I was the Pope's accountant, I would be looking at limiting his ownership of foreign assets, foreign stocks and securities, limiting his access and signature authority over certain accounts of the Vatican that you don't want the IRS getting their hands on, especially especially since things have been leaked outside of the IRS in certain cases. I'm sure whoever's at the bottom of those leakings would love to get their hands on the Pope's FBAR. That would be pretty dangerous to see. So if I'm the Pope's accountant, I'm trying to limit those access to things so that they're not reporting it to the US. At the end of the day, we're trying to limit the reporting requirements in the US and definitely income tax filing obligations. But it may be that these international filings are too stringent. The Pope may not want to file an FBAR every year if he has to. So another option would be to give up US citizenship altogether, because most likely we would expect him to stay in the Vatican for the rest of his life. That's the goal, I'm sure. Being a US citizen might not really make sense anymore from a reporting perspective. Expatriation would be interesting to look into because we would have to understand Pope Leo's worldwide assets. Because if he's considered a covered expat, then he would be subject to an exit tax. And the covered expat definition is, are you compliant with your tax returns? There's a tax liability threshold. If it was over a certain amount over the last 5 years, then you could be a covered expat. But the one that hangs most people up is the $2 million threshold. So if he has assets worth more than 2 million USD on the date of expatriation, he'd be a covered expat and be subject to the exit tax. So we'd need to go through the Pope's worldwide assets and figure out what he actually owns, where it is, what the gain would be on an exit tax, and what we can do about it. So at the end of the day, definitely an interesting situation with the Pope being a US citizen. It would be an honor to be the Pope's accountant. And if you're watching this, Pope, I would love to be your accountant and help you with your FBAR filings and US tax return. If you're enjoying this video, please take a minute to like and subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below.